The Voices Unheard program at Boston Post Adoption Resources is designed to empower adult adoptees in expressing their personal stories and to expand public knowledge and awareness around lived adoptee experiences. Our program goals are accomplished through this Adoptees in 3 video series, through narrative writing workshops, adoptee-created blogs, the use of the Voices Unheard journal, as well as through Voices Unheard, Real Adoptee Stories, which is our annual live speakers forum dedicated to educating the greater Boston community through creative expression and storytelling. Welcome everybody to Adoptees in 3, Connecting Mind, Heart, and Action. I am Elsie Coppola, an adoptee and the program director of Voices Unheard. And we are welcoming Aimee Seiff Christian to the show today. Hi, Aimee.
Hey, Elsie, how you doing?
Good. Is Seiff new?
Yes, you know me as Aimee Christian, but over the time that we've known each other, I had my name changed legally because Seiff was my birth mother's last name, and it was mine on my original birth certificate, and I never knew that until I saw my original birth certificate, and it took me about 2 years, but I had my name changed legally.
Wow, it takes so long, but
Yes, it was a very arduous process.
that's awesome. Okay, well, yeah, I did notice that I've known you as Aimee Christian, but this was a new piece. So
Yep.
let me just do a little intro of you and then we can dive in.
Okay.
Aimee is a writer and domestic adoptee living in Massachusetts. She was born in New York and adopted through Louise Wise Services after 6 months hidden in foster care. She teaches memoir primarily to help other adoptees and former foster youth to reclaim their voices and identities through telling their stories. She's a writing instructor at Grub Street and via her own website, which we will give that information about your website at the end. And Aimee's writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC Think, Poets and Writers, the Atticus Review, Smoke Long Quarterly, Pigeonholes, and more. Aimee edits professionally and is currently querying her memoir, Nobody's Daughter, about adoption and identity. She's also the recipient of the 2024 Crossfield Fellowship and will be participating in the Cuttyhunk Island Writers Residency this fall. How exciting! And as mentioned before when we were talking, Aimee's participated every year in our annual Voices Unheard speakers series. So you do a lot. Thanks for being here with us, Aimee.
I love Voices Unheard. Thank you so much for giving a place to adoptees to talk about their stories because, before I did that, I really didn't feel like we had an opportunity in the Boston area to talk about who we are and, to be ourselves. It's really really difficult for us. And you make that happen.
It is crazy to me that it hasn't been, happening for decades now that adoptees share their stories. It does seem like it's exploding more now, but yeah, I'm really proud and happy to have that event every year, and so glad you come. People always want to know more about you because of the stories you tell. So I'm glad to have you on the show today.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah. So let's dive into the same questions we ask everyone with wildly different answers.
Okay.
If you were to make a movie or write a book, which we know you have, about your adoption journey, what would you title it and why?
Well, right now my memoir is titled Nobody's Daughter. And I think that's because I said for a long time that having two mothers didn't really even add up to one. I have often felt like I've spent my whole life looking to be mothered, and I still am. I'm 51 years old, and um, I'm gonna get really emotional. Both of my birth mother, when I met her, told me that she told me that she was forced to surrender me. And I think we hear that a lot, right? Most of the time, birth mothers are forced to surrender their babies. They don't want to give them up. but something, whether it's their parents or poverty or race or, or something, or pressure or theft, right, is what makes them give up their babies. And I also think that the billion-dollar adoption industry has taught hopeful adoptive parents that they don't have to do anything, right? That babies are blank slates, that they don't have to do anything. I think now maybe it's a little different than it was in the baby scoop era when I was adopted, but my parents were taught absolutely nothing about how to take care of a baby that was not genetically, biologically theirs, that I would just adapt to being a member of their family. And so they didn't take any care to preserve my history, my 6 months of life before coming to them, my my ethnicity, my memory, my anything. And that was really problematic, right? Because I always felt like I didn't belong. I always knew that I didn't belong. And that was just sort of poo-pooed and like pushed under the rug. And we made jokes. Oh, she looks so much like her mother. Oh, you look just like her. Oh, you must get that from your father, and that was really not funny and kind of hurtful. And and I knew that I knew that everything was just not right. And it was something that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about my adoption. We didn't talk about me being different. We didn't talk about any of it. And I was also asked not to talk about my being adopted outside the family. It was private, and it was a family secret, right? It was not something about me. It was not something that was an identifying marker of who I was. It was not part of, Aimee is an adoptee. It was like a family secret that I was not to share, which meant that they were ashamed of it, right? It was something that they were ashamed of, and I was intended to pass. And so I never felt properly parented by anyone, right? Because I was rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected for who I truly was. And so in writing my memoir, I went through many titles, and the one that I finally landed on, and it'll probably change, right? Like when it goes to publication. But the one that I feel the most at home with is Nobody's Daughter, because I just don't feel like I have been mothered in any way except by being a mother myself. I have two biological children, and I pay very close attention to how I parent them. And in so doing, have taken a moment to parent myself.
Yeah.
And that's why the title is meaningful to me. And if I have any say, which I don't, that's a title I would preserve.
I love that title. Yeah. I'm really struck just by that idea. I hear this a lot about being a secret, just like being expected to be a secret, to keep the secret, to keep the secrets keep us sick. I know it's like a cliche term, but I absolutely believe in that
Oh,
little.
totally.
And like being expected to keep the sickness and the shame, like status quo. And that is definitely something I hear a lot.
Well, because that makes us feel like we're the secret, that we're the sickness, right? That we are the shame.
Right.
And there's nothing I could have done that would have been enough to make my parents feel proud of me. And so I became like a total workaholic, that I was constantly looking for praise outside and not inside, right? And so, I couldn't get good enough grades, and I got great grades. Like I couldn't go to the best, and I went to the best schools, and I got great jobs. And like, you could work yourself to the bone just waiting for, Aimee, I'm so proud of you. And it just never came, and then just like, why are you working so hard? Just waiting for like, we love you. Never came.
Hmm. And then with your daughters, who I've met, and I've seen you, and you're an amazing mother. I mean, I was there for, was it your birthday or your daughter's birthday? I forget. The lily pad, we read stuff.
Oh yeah, that was my 50th. Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
right.
God, that was so amazing. And to see you and your daughters together. But like through that process of parenting and then doing some reparenting within that is, can you say a little bit more about like how you started to do that for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I just tell them all the time that I love them and that it's not what they do, it's who they are. Because I never want them to feel that way. I remember, I started writing a journal when I was a child, like really young, just because I told myself I never wanted to forget what it was like. I never wanted to forget what it was like to feel like a commodity. I never wanted to forget what it was like to feel conditionally, not conditionally loved, but just conditionally accepted. Um, and not even accepted for who I was, but just, I had a home and it felt temporary. Um, it wasn't a loving place. It was like, I was told I had a warranty, and I remember asking, like, do you ever wish you could give me back? And they, I think, felt like they were joking when they were like, well, there are some times, but I didn't take that as a joke. I took it as like, boy, they regret picking me, and then realized like they didn't pick me. They got the next available baby,
Yeah.
you know, and I know that. I mean, we all know that, right? We know that. And so with my children, I tell them all the time, like, we made you, and you are my greatest, proudest moments. Like at every birthday, like I'm like, you have to indulge me. You're gonna hear the story of when you were born. Sorry, but like you gotta listen. And they're like, here goes mom again. But like they love hearing it because they know it's coming and they know I haven't forgotten. And and we talk all the time about like, this is your body. This body is really important. I made it. I love it. I love your toes and I love your whatever. And like they do sports and they do school and they do whatever. And like they don't get good grades for me, and I'm like, you do this because you can do it, right? You do this because, you do your sport because it's what you love. Don't do it for me. Like, don't do these things for me. I would love you if you stopped doing it. I love you no matter what. I want you to do it because you love it. Like, you do your things because it's what matters to you. One of my daughters is disabled and I love her body. I made that body.
Mhm.
We accept that body as much as we accept the next body. And they have to know that all the time. And they do.
Yeah.
They do. And
So
I really believe that they do.
I think they do too. Um, it's so clear that they have, I don't know, I've only met them once, but I see them on, and I can't, but it seems like they feel, and I could be projecting this, but it seems like they feel for sure. Um, just like secure, I guess. Secure is the word, I guess. In in the relationship or in their
I mean,
place. Yeah.
I have journal entries from when I was their age and below and younger that say like, if I ever have a kid, I want them to know that, I want to remember what it was like. So, and that has stayed with me my whole life
Yeah.
because it's lonely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I would write this I might cut this part, but just to tell you, um sometimes I tell my own story and then I cut it out, but I had like all these journals about about that I was from like a secret magical land and like like I was sent to this family like for a specific reason. Like there were
Not the
like
first time I've heard that.
all characters and it was just, yeah, I think that we're just trying
Mhm.
to figure out how to feel. I mean, it's just a crazy thing. It's like replanted somewhere completely new, and
Mhm.
what do you do with that, especially if you're not supposed to talk about it? I mean, it's a
Yep.
crazy thing no matter what, but if you're not supposed to talk about it, that just
Then
adds a
what?
whole layer. Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, so going into the next question, what advice would you give your younger adopted self? It can be any age.
It's interesting that you ask this question about what advice I would give to my younger self, because I recently wrote a letter to my younger self and and just as an exercise. And in it, I told my younger self that I would learn from meeting both of my biological parents and hearing the story of my conception, that they loved each other and that I was born of love. And that really made a difference to me, because I spent so much time growing up um, engaging in self-harm and feeling unloved and unwanted. I mean, I developed a real problem with that. For 17 years, I engaged in self-harm and couldn't stop. Um, and it was really, really bad, because I just felt so bereft of, like, I was like, I was a mistake. How do I justify being on this planet? Like, and then being put in this family where I don't feel like anybody, like I was put in the wrong family. I was put in this family that has no, like, they don't connect to me. Um, but finding out after, and I know that not every adoptee meets their biological parents, and even when they do, it's not always wonderful. And for me, it was a real struggle for a long time. But they did both tell me before they died that I was born of love, and that was meaningful, even though they were teenagers, even though they didn't stay together, even though they didn't stay connected to each other, that they really loved each other, and that they were sorry that they couldn't keep me. um it really mattered. It really mattered. And that I was an accident perhaps, but I wasn't a mistake,
Mm.
really made a difference to me, that I could then take that and turn my life into something really positive, was all I needed to understand that the rest of my life was within my power to make it useful, make it valuable. And I did. And every minute of my life from that point on became super meaningful to me. And I haven't rested since. You know what I mean? Like, I've packed so much into my life. Um, and I like hope I live to be 100, because I have so much to do and so much to learn. And I want to be with my family, and I want to see things and do things. And it was like all I needed to
Yeah,
not feel that it was all on me to turn it around.
yeah, that's a really um big catalyst moment
It
for
was.
whole new, yeah, rebirthing in a way.
Yeah, that's how it felt.
That's amazing. Yeah. Um, I was wondering if your birth mother ever told you the story of being born, like in detail, like the ones, yeah. It's
She put it out of her mind because she had to leave the hospital alone. But my birth father handed me a CD and said, "You may or may not have been conceived to this song." And then
oh
told
my
me the story. And then after which was Sweet Judy Blue Eyes by Crosby, Stills and Nash.
God.
How's that? Right. So now I cry whenever I hear that song. And then after my birth mother died, so they both died really young. My mother died when she was 56. She got really quite ill and then had a stroke. And then my father died of suicide. Actually, he was an addict and then died by suicide. But after they died, their high school friends came together and told me the story of their love. They had been together for 2 years in high school. And I heard like the whole story. And so they were like, they weren't lying when they told me that I had been born of love. Like, it was true. Um, and I mean, they had broken up, and this was like a last hurrah kind of thing, and whatever. But it was really lovely and weird to be like, I was conceived to this song, like, it was odd, but meaningful. And like, not
Yeah,
many people get that.
yes.
But yeah, when I got pregnant, I had asked for the first time, I had asked my birth mother, "So tell me what it's like." And she was like, "With you, I tried to forget. I had to. What else was I supposed to do?"
Yeah, I imagine she probably just had to dissociate and
Yep.
like with any trauma, just cut it off. And
Yeah.
so how are you doing today? How are you healing today? Like what kind of things do you do? This is the third question. What kind of
Yeah.
things do you do in your like regular life to kind of, I mean, I'm hearing that you have your hands in a bunch of things. You have a very creative life. You're surrounded by animals. You have this family. How do you manage to keep like the critical voice or the, you know, hypervigilance in your body, like kind of in balance or in check?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's an evolving process, right? Like I I have to I have to call it out and name it when it comes up, because it still comes up, but like I focus on my kids. I talk about it. I write about it, and I teach my classes, and I think that trying to be a presence for other adoptees, and not just adoptees, but other adults. Like I teach adult writing because a lot of us have had um early trauma that I think this present political climate has done a really remarkable job of continuing to oppress.
Mm.
Um, and we need to reclaim who we are, whether that's, I mean, I try to have classes that are for adoptees only, but then for, folks who are queer or disabled, or or reclaiming who they are in any kind of way, or discovering that they have some other issues that they need to work out on paper. um I have a degree in education, and being a writer, I think, is a really nice match for folks who
Mm.
are just discovering that they need to work something out. And that's what that's where I really get jazzed up about. And I find that to be really healing for me. It's my way of doing service and helping to earn a living. And I don't charge a lot for folks who are in need, um, in some way or other. But I also, like you said, I have a lot of animals. Um, I've got birds, I've got cats, I've got my kids, and just trying to write my own story. Uh, in I just wrote the last chapter over
Yeah.
of my memoir. I
Wow.
had to rewrite it because life changed, from the time that I wrote it, the first time, because that's what happens in memoir, is that, like, you realize some stuff and things change. And I don't know, life is a work in progress. That's all I'll say, is that life is a work in progress. But I never thought that it would be, I don't think happy is the right word. I think happy is a transient emotion, but I experienced so much joy, um, that I never thought I would, when I was growing up. And, it gets better. It really gets so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so true with the I feel like if I wait any longer with my memoir, I'm gonna have to rewrite the whole thing. It's just like
Yeah,
every
totally. Totally. Yeah.
it's like at the insight, your insight grows, and it's so tough to have that chunk
Yeah.
of like your history just right there.
Hmm.
But well, good luck with, I'm sure that it will get picked up in a great place, and then we'll have to have you back on and
Yeah. We'll see.
um
I hope so.
yeah, well, thank you so much for being here and sharing more about yourself and your story. And where is the place that people can find you the easiest? We'll also put this up on like a banner under the ad. for
Oh, well, I'm on Instagram at the right Aimee, which is THEWRITEAIMEE. And my website is aimeechristian.net.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Aimee, for being with us. And we'll
Thanks for
talk.
having me.